Welcome to Syndicated Nightmares, where each week we take a deep dive into an episode of Freddy's Nightmares based on the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Today we're covering Judy Miller, Come On Down, which aired November 5th, 1988, written by Jack Temchin and Michael DeLuca, directed by Tom DeSimone. I probably messed up all of their names because I am terrible at pronunciation. So anyway... How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
All right.
I don't think that any of them will be listening, but if they are, they can contact us and we'll issue a correction.
I think that's fair. So this episode is about Judy Miller wins big money on a game show, which solves life's little nightmares while creating newer, more tragic nightmares. And then the episode features Susan Oliver as the maid, also Judy Miller's future self. So I think it's worth noting Susan Oliver. She was a pretty well-known actress at the time. She has a pretty long list of movies and TV shows she was in. And this was her last acting role because she unfortunately died from cancer, I think, a year or so after this aired. So, yeah. So, rest in peace, Susan. Thank you very much for being a part of the show because she was actually very good in it.
Yeah, she did a great job.
The director, Tom DeSimone, he directed Hell Night.
I saw that. Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Linda Blair, she's great in it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the movie poster to it.
Oh, she's like climbing up the gate, right?
Yeah, and there's like a car behind her. Yeah, it's a really great poster. I think almost every horror movie poster from the 80s, it just really seems to capture what the movie's about and just instill that type of fear in you just looking at the poster. I'm always like amazed by 80s horror posters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they continued the trend of always hiring an episode director who had done horror movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really hope that the series continues to do that. I'll be really bummed when I find out, like, oh, this director has never done anything. Well, all right. Thanks for trying, Freddy's Nightmares.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, fingers crossed for John Carpenter on the next one.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. It would have been great if they got Wes Craven to do one, but I think by this point he had just washed his hands of the whole nightmare world.
Yeah, I can't see that having gone over well if they approached him.
Yeah. Okay, so what did you think of this episode?
I enjoyed it, but it was like a Twilight Zone episode with a couple appearances by Freddy. Mm-hmm. What did you think?
I liked the last half more than I liked the first half, which is complete opposite of the previous episode with Mariska Hargitay in it. I liked the first half more than I liked the second half.
Okay.
So we learn right from the beginning that Judy Miller is in a very suffocating marriage. I like the symbolism of, in the beginning, she's in bed with her husband and she's lying wide awake and he has his arm around her neck and like, it looks like he's trying to cuddle with her, but really he's just like smothering the crap out of her. And I thought that was a pretty good indication of like how trapped she is in this marriage. So I appreciated that opening segment because it really prepared you and told you what was going on without having to say a word.
Yes. Yeah, it was a good way to start it off. And so he's in law school, which somehow he needs a pressed shirt to take an exam. That was weird.
That's funny that you mentioned that because in the previous episode, they were in college. I assume everyone goes to Springwood University. And Mariska was in medical school and having like late night parties all the time in their sorority. They just didn't care. So I wonder like what Springwood Law School is like, if that's where all the uppity rich people go or, and so they need a pressed shirt to take an exam.
I guess so. It must be this very prestigious law school, which would be named Springwood Law School because everything in that city is named Springwood something.
Yeah. Well, and if he's going to Springwood Law School and he said like it's a very prestigious place, he would probably be a future public defender of Springwood. He, probably learned from the same defense attorneys that got Freddy off. So maybe he's learning from the best here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless he's being taught by the prosecutors who like totally flubbed that case.
Right. I guess we never learn what kind of what kind of law Tom wants to specialize in.
No, we don't.
So one thing I circled in my notes was what does Judy do? Because she's talking about how she has to work, and he's going to school and she's working, but it doesn't. I don't mean to devalue, taking care of the house and all that, but it doesn't seem like she has like an outside the home job. It seems like she's just doing housekeeping, and his parents live there.
Yeah. Well, we later find out that they are living with his parents. So, yeah, so while he's in law school and she's working / cleaning the house, his parents are kind of treating her like a maid, right? Like, 'cause she's cooking and cleaning and doing everything, and they're kind of awful to her, which is another continuation of all the parents and children in this series have terrible relationships. Some are abusive, some are borderline abusive. I don't know if that's to like signify what Freddy's relationships would have been with his foster parents or step parents. Why is there always a troubled parental relationship?
Yeah, and that's true in all the films as well.
Mm-hmm. Is that just something in Springwood Water where kids and parents can't get along? What's going on at the Springwood Water plant?
Right. Well, in interviews, like Wes Craven had talked about how he meant to set it up as like the older generation versus the younger generation. But in this episode, they're not teenagers. They're
adults.
Yeah, I think because they say her date of birth at one point, and I think this aired in 88, and they said she was born in 63, so she's 25.
Which it's funny that you mentioned her birthday because later in the show, she is listening to the radio to get the winning lottery numbers because it's her dream to win the lottery. And they call off the numbers, and it's 8, 13, 9, 1, 15. Those are the winning numbers. And I wrote those down because I was like, maybe later on they'll come in the episode. They'll talk about them in the episode. And the only thing that came close to those numbers was her birthday, which is August 13th. And so we have 813 as the first two winning lottery numbers, and then her birthday is August 13th. And that's the only thing that really came up with those numbers. So,
well, it does make sense that if she's got to pick numbers from the lottery, she might as well play her birthday.
Yeah, so I was hoping that the remaining three numbers, 9, 1, 15, that they would come up somewhere in the episode, but I don't think that they did, or if they did, it completely passed me by. But so she's in an unhappy marriage with her husband, basically because she's stressed out and just doesn't want to live with his weird, gross parents. And her husband's name is Tom. I looked him up on IMDb, and he has done a lot of voice acting more so than acting. He plays a voice in the Friday the 13th game. He was a voice in Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Oh, really?
And he was also in the same episode as Heather Langenkamp in the Jag series. The episode's called Odd Man Out, and that had Heather in it, and this Tom guy is in it as well.
That's great. Do they share screen time, or have you seen the episode?
I have not seen the episode. I was looking for a episode synopsis, and I couldn't find one to see if there are two characters or somehow intertwined.
Okay.
I think in that episode, I think she plays a waitress in it. No, that might be a different... He was in 18 Wheels of Justice. He was in an episode of that, and so was Heather, but not in the same episode. Mm-hmm. But in one of those, she plays a waitress, and she just pours someone coffee and like has a little bit of dialogue, and that's it. I don't know if they had an actual scene together. It would be cool if they did, though.
Yeah. Nancy is referenced in this episode.
Yeah. Towards the end, she is. But so for the game show, I'm not sure how it happens because I was rather confused with the setup of this episode. I wasn't able to distinguish when the dream ended and when reality started.
Right.
I'm not sure if you had that problem.
Because it's like the game show, the things going on in the game show were clearly part of a dream, but then she actually won $1 million?
Yeah, so she's dreaming about being on this weird game show, which is kind of set up like Jeopardy. So she's on this weird game show, and when the contestants are being introduced by the host, one is from Knoxville, Tennessee, another one is from Hackensack, New Jersey. But then for Springwood, they just say Springwood, USA. They don't give it an actual state.
Right. I know when they made the first one, they hadn't decided Springwood was in Ohio, but by 88 they must have.
I thought the first time they talked about it being in an actual state was in Freddy's Dead, and that didn't come out until 91.
Oh, so maybe not.
Yeah, so I don't think they had actually given it a state. Maybe they were just trying to pull like a Simpsons move where Springfield, there's so many Springfields.
Right.
they won't say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think they gave it a state until Freddy's Dead.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the TV show wasn't allowed to commit Springwood to an actual state.
Right.
Who knows what kind of red tape,
Yeah.
everything the show had to go through. So the contestants were all from an actual state except for Judy Miller, who's just USA. Way to represent everyone in USA, Judy Miller.
Yes, she's like the every woman.
During this game show, this Jeopardy-like game show, she has to answer a series of questions, and if she gets one wrong, the punishment is someone she knows dies. And the first is her in-laws, her father-in-law and her mother-in-law. And their way of death is to be covered in honey and then have ants poured on them. And I guess the ants will eat them alive. Is that right?
Yes. Deadly South American ants.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay. So these deadly South American ants are poured on her in-laws. And of course she gets the answer wrong. So they're devoured by these ants. But what I thought was kind of cool about it, Judy Miller wasn't able to help them or save them because she was stuck in honey. Like there was honey under her feet where she was standing. Mm-hmm. And so she wasn't able to move. And that reminded me a lot of Debbie Stevens' death in Nightmare 4 when she's in the cockroach motel. And she isn't able to move her feet because she's stuck, on that like glue stuff. And it was very much like Nightmare 4. And Mick Strawn was the production designer for Nightmare 4, and he was also the production designer for this episode of Freddy's Nightmares. He's the designer for multiple episodes of the series, but for this one as well. I just thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe he was like, we have some leftover gook from the
from the cockroach. Let me just pour it on here for you. Mm-hmm. I like when there are similarities like that, whether it's done on purpose or just because my mind is so nightmare focused, I pick up on those little things and make it more than what it should be. Kind of makes the episode a little bit more enjoyable to have those winks and nods to the film series.
And weirdly enough, when I saw that, I was thinking of the stairs in the original when she falls into like the marshmallow gook when she's going up the stairs.
Oh, yeah.
But the Debbie thing, it's much closer to that.
Yeah, no, I didn't pick up on the stairs at all from Nightmare 1. Yeah, when she the stairs turn into quick mix or something, cement wheel, whatever it is. Yeah.
And then I liked when she runs back home and finds them dead, and then the transition, like she's finding the bodies, and then all of a sudden, the walls get pulled away, and she's back on the game show. I thought that was cool because it was very dreamlike.
Yeah, and I think that's the actual game show she was on when she did win $1 million, and that's what changes her life, right?
But then she goes back, and it's the whole pit and the pendulum thing with her husband.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the game show host is asking her very personal questions that are all about her husband, and her husband's strapped on this pendulum thing, and every time she answers a question, whether it's right or wrong, the pendulum falls down closer to his stomach and eventually guts him. Mm-hmm. He dies from that, but then when she wakes up, she's a millionaire and her husband is alive. And then they explain because they won this $1 million, they were able to buy a condo for his parents in Florida. So his parents are in Florida right now living in a condo, and they stayed in his parents' house. Yes.
And I always, whenever there's shows like this where someone wins money, I always think too hard about the amount. So if she won $1 million, she'd end up with about $500,000 after taxes.
I wrote that down too. I wrote down how much she would get after taxes, how much the condo would have been, what the HOA fees would have been, just to see how much that they had. I had written down in my notes, and I think this is maybe they had a commercial break or something for when Freddy had to come and give one of his funny one-liners. It didn't feel like they had any real direction to it, because there's a lot where like Freddy will have like a heart, or in this case I think a uncooked turkey or chicken just comes flying down, and so he'll grab whatever he has that's, you know, icky looking, a heart or liver or whatever, and he'll give his one-liner, and then he'll like hesitate, and then he'll lick it or do something gross. And it just felt like whoever was directing this was like, okay, Robert, you're just going to come in, say this line, and then do something that Freddy would do, and we'll call it a day. You know, it felt like there was no real direction given to him, and he was just like, go, do whatever you want to do, because you're Freddy by now, and, you know, you can do no wrong.
I thought it was funny when he was under the bed.
Yes.
Like they're... So the couple, Judy and Tom, are like in bed having a conversation, and then the camera tilts down and he's under the bed and gives a one-liner. But I thought it was funny just like imagining them filming that, and like Robert Englund is in full makeup and he's got to lay there under the bed.
Yeah.
Like waiting for that whole dialogue scene just to get to his line.
And he's thinking, like, I don't get paid enough for this. This TV show is stupid. When are we being canceled? She won $1 million. I thought that after taxes she would get about $800,000, but you say $500,000?
I thought you only get about half of it with winnings like that.
If you get it all in one lump sum, that's probably true. I was just taking 20% out for taxes, but you're probably right, which kind of makes it more difficult for her to be living the life of luxury that she had bestowed on herself with these winnings. Because so we'll go with your $500,000. So she had $500,000 after taxes. She bought a condo for her in-laws in Florida. How much were condos back then? $50,000?
That's a good question. I mean, it was inflation. There's been a lot of inflation since then. So yeah, let's go with $50,000.
And so there's probably HOA fees that go with the condo. So we'll tack on another. HOA fees are like usually about $250, I would say, a month. So about $250 a month, whatever that is a year that they would have to spend. She was spending a lot of money on luxury. She had this microwave that talked back to her and like told her to have a nice day, or it was something bizarre. Like now 30 years later and we still don't have a microwave that advanced as well as this episode, you know. Oh, she's still putting her husband through law school. So how much was law school back then? Another $50,000, maybe more?
Yeah.
I don't know. So now she's probably down to like $300,000 maybe. And so she hired a maid, and I would assume a maid back then made probably $25,000 a year, if that. Yeah, so her money is just going for really nothing to show for.
Right. I mean, they already had a house because they got it from the in-laws. And then I was also thinking, you know, in the beginning, she's like, what about my dreams? But we never, like...
hear what her goals are.
Like, but then she gets money and she just wants to be... quote, a woman of leisure. So, like talking about her dreams would have made more sense if there'd been something like she wanted to be an artist or a writer or a singer or something, but she doesn't seem to have any dreams. She just wants to like buy stuff.
I guess that could be her dream or her ambition in life. If, you know, it seems like she doesn't have control over her life. She's in a marriage that she really isn't happy with. So buying these tangible things, maybe that gives her a sense of like importance or something, or like she's able to control her happiness by what she's able to buy. I'm probably reading more into it
or
than
that
what I need to.
Right, or that it's her money, like she wanted, it's her money, even though she says otherwise to her husband. You know, she says it's ours, but she's the one that obtained it.
Well, and then that goes right into the plot point of the second half of this episode, is that she has these winnings, and the husband wants her to save the money. And he even says, like, you're spending all of our money on luxuries, we should start saving it. And then he goes to his law school, and the maid stops by because she hired a maid. And the maid is played by Susan Oliver. So the maid is kind of giving her the creeps a little bit because she walks in and, just has like this creepy Stepford wife vibe to her. We find out that the maid is actually Judy Miller, 40 years from now or something, because something happens with the husband and the money.
Yes. Yeah. Was it 30 maybe? Or did they not even say the number of years?
I don't think they said the number of years. I'm just guesstimating by probably their actual age difference.
Yeah.
Or the makeup that she had on. So it's probably like 30 years later, 30, 40 years later maybe.
Yeah, that would, well, yeah, if the present day Judy Miller is 25, then 65 seems about right. And then she shows her the newspaper that says prize-winning housewife fatally stabs husband.
Yeah, the maid brings a newspaper with her to clean the house, and she's like, "Hey, have you checked out this headline?
I saved this from when we were on the front page."
So she finds out that it's quite possible this maid is herself 40 years from now, and the maid is coming to warn her about something, but we don't really know what it is, right? Like, because the maid is trying to make it seem like that Judy Miller and her husband get into this huge fight, and there's an altercation and a stabbing, and she like serves life in prison. That's like the vibe that I got from it.
Right. Well, a significant time in prison and then gets out. Has no money. Yeah.
Okay, has no money. So the maid is trying to like prevent this from happening. Yeah. What did you think of all that?
I thought it was cool. Like, I loved the line. This was very Twilight Zone-y, where she's like, the phone is going to ring in 60 seconds. And if you still want me to leave after you take that phone call, I will. Like, I just, even though the call itself really wasn't that creepy, like just that line beforehand was really creepy.
The phone call was from the bank saying that the husband stopped into the bank, withdrew a significant amount of money, and created his own bank account that didn't have her name on it. So the bank wanted her to be aware of it, and she ends up putting her name on the account, and she's going to wait it out to see if her husband will tell her what he did, to see like what her next course of action is, if she's going to stay or if she's going to leave, depending on if he tells her or not. Yeah, so the maid is like, I mean, you guys did love each other at one point, but money changes people, sort of thing.
Yeah. And then he comes home and he's like, I was going to move your money and keep it off the account, but we will add your name to it. And she's like so happy. And it's like, I mean, I get that she's relieved because of the conversation with the maid, but like just taking what he said at face value, it's like, I was going to block you from getting to your own money, but
but no, I'm not. I looked into your eyes and I just love you so much.
Yeah.
I can't do that to you. Yeah. When Judy Miller thinks that all is great in her world, she wakes up in the morning and her husband isn't in bed because he is on the phone talking to a mystery woman, and she finds a phone number in her husband's jacket pocket. And did you notice anything about that phone number?
Well, one, it was a 555 number. But yeah, that the name is Nancy.
Yeah, I liked that. So, I mean, we're in 1988. Oh, Nancy's dead. So he's not talking to her at whatever university she went to. Did they ever say what university she went to?
I don't think so. Yeah,
she was just studying at some dream clinic or something, right? Probably Springwood University.
Right.
I'm sure it's in the comics. I need to read those.
Oh, yeah, because there is a comic about her being in school. Yeah.
Yeah, and she has like two roommates, Priscilla and Sybil or something like that. Yeah, and I think Neil might be involved in the comics as well. I have to read them. I should really read them.
He is, but I remember him being in the comics, but it's like post Nightmare 3 because he survived.
Oh, yeah. So part of the comics is when she's in college, and then I think later on in the comics they bring like her in the dream world or something like that. Yeah, when the Dream Warriors are active in the comic series. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to just sit down and read them one night. But yeah, so he is talking to a woman named Nancy on the phone, and it's very obvious that they are having an affair. So Judy Miller finds this out and goes downstairs, sees the newspaper that the maid gave her with the prize-winning housewife fatally stabs husband. And sure enough, that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how the episode ends, right?
Yeah. It ends very abruptly. Like, she raises the knife and then we're done. But yeah, like, the maid was warning her she says, say I love you every day, every hour, which seems a bit like overkill.
A bit excessive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I heard you the first 1,800 times. And to get rid of the money. And then did she take the maid's advice that she is going to get rid of the money?
I don't know, because she wanted to donate it to charity, but her husband was like, we're not doing that.
Okay.
But now that she killed her husband, I think she's going to need it for a defense attorney, right?
Yeah, she will.
And they can get pretty expensive, so this is premeditated murder case, so it's going to be pretty expensive.
Unless she just pleads guilty.
Yeah, that's true, but she would still have to serve 25 years. And that's probably where she's been this whole time, and that's why she's a maid now.
Right.
Because, she just served 25 years. So she would be, 50 years old when she got out of prison?
Yeah.
If she has a good defense attorney, I'm sure that they could try to talk it down to some type of, manslaughter, or take the premeditated out and just do, murder 2. Probably more manslaughter, and then she'd only have to serve 10 years. Mm-hmm. I hope she found a good attorney. Just use that leftover $300,000 for a good attorney, Judy Miller.
But it also seems like the better solution would have been for her to take control of all her money and get rid of him. Like, she wanted on the game show, she can, take all that money and run off.
Well, yes, the better solution would have been to not murder your husband and just say, okay, honey, I'm going to the grocery store.
Right.
And then just never come back.
Yes.
But yeah. Mm-hmm. But,
right.
that wouldn't be Freddy's Nightmares if it had a moral ending.
And it seemed weird because the older version of her, the maid, kept saying, something goes wrong. I can't remember what it is. So she remembered that the phone was going to ring in 60 seconds with a phone call from the bank, but she couldn't remember that she caught her husband cheating on her.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, unless she forgot that it was discovered that quickly, and so she thought, maybe if you, smother him with love, that'll never happen.
Maybe she was just trying to make it so, if she gave her too much information, she wouldn't be able to handle that he was having an affair. So she just was hoping that if she smothered him with love and affection, that he wouldn't continue the affair, or he would end it, and then she would never be none the wiser, and they could just go and live happy.
Yeah.
But why would she, if the maid knew that she was being cheated on with her husband, why would she still want to work things out?
Right. See, if I were the maid coming back in time to warn my past self, I would say, make sure the money stays in your name, and no matter how mad you get, don't stab anyone. That would have been the better advice.
Yeah, that is the better advice. Wait, well, and who knows what happened to the maid when she was in prison? Maybe she needed to be in prison to enjoy the simple things in life when she got out. Mm-hmm. Maybe she met someone in prison and she's really happy now, and the only way that they were going to meet is if she went to prison. True. I don't know. But I think even then that she could still have her own fate, create her own fate, because if she knew the love of her life, or if she met the love of her life in prison, all she would need to tell Judy Miller is, hey, go look this person up.
Oh, true, yeah.
They'll be out in about 7 years. Mm. So go and find this person and talk to them, and you're just really going to hit it off.
Right. Yeah.
So who knows? And
I liked the line when Judy says to the maid, I'll make sure I never become you. I get that was the point, but it was it was a pretty harsh thing to say. Yeah. Yeah.
Maids are nice people, and they're just making a living. You don't be ashamed of that career choice. Mm-hmm.
I once had this was years and years ago when a year or two after college, but I was moving out of somewhere and moving to somewhere else, and that my housemate said to me, okay, if I could give you some advice for your next place, hire a cleaning service because you're terrible at cleaning. So, yeah. Wow. But I never have. I've always, cleaned my place myself.
Okay, so what did you think of this episode?
I mean, I enjoyed it on a Twilight Zone level. I think if I had watched it back then, I would have been like, this doesn't have anything to do with Freddy. And I think that would have bothered me. What did you think?
I liked the second half more than the first half. I'm a big fan of time travel. So I think the whole episode could have just been Judy and the maid going through the course of those 3 days where she won the money and like saying, okay, don't do that because it's going to lead to your husband's murder.
Right.
So let's stay away from all sharp objects.
Right.
Yeah, but when I was watching the episode, I love the movie Time Cop. It has Jean-Claude Van Damme in it.
Oh, I've seen it, but I can't remember that much about it.
Well, there's one rule. The movie's about time travel, and there's one rule that they say over and over again in the movie, and it's always stuck with me. It's that the same matter cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So basically, your future self and your present self can't touch because it would be like this molecular breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time that Judy Miller and the maid touched one another, because they're the same person, I was like, oh no, same matter can't occupy the same space at the same time. You are breaking like rule number 1 of time travel.
Oh no.
I kept thinking about that every single time they touched one another, but that's just my own personal issue with time travel.
Okay. And I was thinking the Terminator rules where it's like, no matter what you do, like, these events are going to happen, and no matter what you do, it's not going to change, like, the big events that are going to happen.
Well, is that a Terminator 1 rule? Because in Terminator 2, we learn no fate but what we make.
Oh, true. They do break that. I guess I'm thinking of 1 and 3. Because they're trying to stop the robots taking over the world, and that does happen at the end of 3.
Yeah, so in 2, it's no fate but what we make, and they're able to stop Skynet. But then in 3, it didn't matter because all it did was just delay Skynet from taking over. It didn't stop it completely.
Yeah. So now, this Judy Miller was warned by the maid, but the stuff happened anyway. So is it gonna be the cycle that this Judy Miller grows up and then she's going to travel back in time again?
Yeah, it's just going to be an endless loop of the maid coming to warn of what's going to happen. And then I think it's just going to happen anyway, because we learned that in Terminator 3. It doesn't matter what you do, it's going to happen.
It's just a cycle of, winning a game show, killing your husband, and then becoming a maid eventually.
Yeah. For this one, I would have been very disappointed with the amount of Freddy not being in it. And even though I liked the second half, it wouldn't be enough for me to really be hooked on the show. In 1988, they didn't have DVRs, but I probably would have recorded it on my VCR and watched it sometime throughout the week. But if I had a party to go to that night or something, or other plans, I wouldn't have stayed home just to be able to watch this episode. Which is what I did when the X-Files was on. Okay. I was like, oh, you want to go out Sunday night? I have to be home by 9 o'clock because the X-Files are on.
Yeah, I don't think it's not something I would have stayed home for either. All right, so thanks so much for listening to this episode. Please join us next week when we talk about Season 1, Episode 6, Saturday Night Special, where we discover that every attractive woman in Springwood is also a champion figure skater.
Syndicated Nightmares is brought to you by It's All Been Done Network. After today's podcast, please check out It's All Been Trekked Before. Are you a Star Trek fan? Stephen, Keith, Jimmy, and friends have been trekking their way through the classic series on the Star Trek Rewatch podcast, It's All Been Trekked Before. They have great segments like Fashion, Alternate Episode, and Baiting Jimmy by Bringing Up Star Wars. Now suffer through the final episodes of Season 3 along with them before they move on to another decade and the plethora of spin-offs. You can find more info about It's All Been Trekked Before and all other IABD shows at iabdpresents.com.